Being against the big three is a popular trend that comes and goes in the bodybuilding world, and I personally always find it kind of comical because, the thing is, you've seen so many top level bodybuilders over the decades who love the big three. They love squat, they love bench, they love deadlift. Some of them love one of them, some of them love two of them, some of them love all three of them. Right? Even some of the all time greats like Ronnie Coleman, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbu, all of these people, they made heavy use of the squat, bench, and deadlift. But a lot of people, they always seem to have this idea that they want to separate the idea of powerlifting from bodybuilding, and historically that's just a silly idea. Now, am I saying that a bodybuilder should perform these exactly like a powerlifter? No, of course not. Right? I'm not saying they should do that at all. Uh, that would be sometimes ridiculous. But to discard them as an exercise because, well, they don't build muscle, they don't isolate anything, is again just ridiculous because they're amazing builders. Now, am I saying they're the only thing anyone needs? Of course not. But they're great basic foundational exercises. People have used them to build tons of muscle. And, but I would say for bodybuilding purposes, curls are just as important. That's why in the background here, you'll see me throwing some curls up also. So, but the thing is with it, they can be a big part of the foundation. And I think for many people, they make great foundational exercises. In fact, I would say for most people, and there's definitely some exceptions to this, absolutely some exceptions to this. But for many people, and again, I would say possibly even the majority of people, they can be great foundational exercises. And here's the thing to think about with them. Not only do they have a history of putting a lot of muscle on people, all three of them work large amounts of muscle. They all work as good base building exercises, and there's an enormous amount of coaching data. There's an enormous amount of scientific data, research data on these three exercises, right? It's an enormous amount of data on it. And again, when you start looking at university studies, you start looking at coaching information from coaches all over the world because they're the main lifts in the biggest strength sport. They have a high degree of popularity. That also means they have a lot of strength coaches and other people who have spent countless hours researching them, perfecting them, teaching people how to perform them safely, how to get the right movement patterns, moment arms for different functions with these exercises. Also, due to the popularity, we have huge amounts of scientific research and data on these exercises. Okay, there's an enormous amount of data. There have been studies done looking at the hypertrophy of them, even looking at different muscles, like specific hypertrophy studies have been done on all three of them, even sometimes comparing them to other exercises so that we can see what they do compared to them. There's tons of EMG data on them, even sometimes investigating how depth affects movement patterns, how grip width, foot width, all of these things. So when you start looking at all these factors, there's so much collective knowledge and data on these that gives them an advantage. So if all other factors are equal, in many ways it can give these movements an advantage over other exercises simply because of the enormous amount of data we have to pull from. And also keeping in mind, because there's tons of programming data, biomechanics, safety data from all these decades of coaching and thousands of athletes and lifters, it does make programming them and getting progressive overload out of these movements, a little easier, just because of the enormous amount of data that we have there. And I want to be clear, I am not telling anyone that any one exercise is necessary for muscle growth purposes, because it's not. Muscles themselves, to a large degree, they care about tension, they care about joint angle specificity, right? All these different things. They care about where the loads are at different joint angles. But it doesn't mean that we should be excluding exercises. And I think the thing here is that if we're trying to get big, if we're working muscles from a couple of different effective angles, we're working the different functions of muscles, and we're loading them progressively, with enough volume to stimulate growth and not so much volume that it's impacting recovery in a negative way, that we can grow from an extremely wide variety of exercises. an extremely wide variety of them. So when you look at it in that context, to start excluding these movements is really just a trendy thing. And for people to act as if they're not effective muscle builders is, again, just people following trends. They're following trends, and they're not looking at the fact that they have been very successfully used in the past. They're time proven. We have all this data on them and useful information, and that information, as I've said before, gives them certain advantages. Okay, it gives them certain advantages, up to and including knowing how to adjust them for individual people, because you get people who are like, yeah, but maybe they don't feel right, or they're not best for the anatomy of this person. Well, maybe the variation you're using isn't good for that person. Okay, all right, fair play. But we have all this data that tells us how to adjust them for different people. So if people feel certain pains or discomfort, we know how to adjust the grips, the arch, the stance, the toe positions, right? Even things like deadlifts, we know how to adjust leverages and how high you should set your hips based upon, torso versus leg lengths, because it's all been studied, it's been looked at. Okay, we know how to account for all of these things. So in a lot of ways, that excuse doesn't fly. It just means that maybe the way that you've been trying to teach it to a lifter may not be ideal for their anatomy, but the exercise itself can be fantastic. It can be fantastic. And again, I want to be clear here. I'm not saying that they're for everyone. There are going to legitimately be people who are exceptions when I say that they're great exercises for hypertrophy, that most people can make phenomenal gains with them as base building exercises. Obviously that doesn't mean everyone on earth. There can definitely be exceptions. There can be people, with certain anatomies that do make them problematic. There will be people with certain injury histories, or no matter how you adjust the movement, it inflames things. But again, a lot of times the people who are like, well, I get this problem when I do it, when you make just simple form adjustments of things they weren't aware of with it, a lot of times those pains go away, those problems go away, that inflammation goes away by adjusting them when you go back and look at the body of knowledge and an experienced coach with it. So again, it's silly for people to just discount them, it's just as silly as when a barbell curl gets discounted by strength coaches because the biceps are not that functional of a muscle. Come on, it's a barbell curl. It's a time-proven exercise. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.